Gold has overtaken US government bonds as the world's top reserve asset, following years of relentless buying by central banks and a historic rally that has seen prices nearly double over the past 2 years. Bullion accounted for 27% of all global central bank reserve assets at the end of 2025, up from 20% a year earlier, according to a report by the European Central Bank. US Treasuries fell to 22% from 25% over the same period. The shifting composition of reserve assets, highly liquid holdings that central banks use to support their currencies, meet international payment obligations, and provide liquidity in times of financial turmoil, reflects an attempt by many countries to seek alternatives to the US dollar, the world's de facto reserve currency. Those efforts have accelerated since 2022, when Washington used sanctions to freeze Russia's dollar reserves over the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The biggest accumulators of gold reserves since 2022 were China, Poland, Turkey, and India, the report showed. The dollar's role as the world's reserve currency placed the US in a strategic position as the world needed its domestic currency for global trade and energy. The US used this exorbitant privilege to sanction, embargo, and effectively control its enemies, competitors, and opponents. But its weaponization of the dollar is pushed the world to de-dollarize, and this makes this the beginning of the end of America's real nuclear weapon. For decades, Switzerland has been one of Europe's great success stories, wealthy, stable, and highly productive. But on June 14th, Swiss voters will decide whether there should be limits to its population growth. The country is holding a referendum that would cap Switzerland's permanent population below 10 million people. The proposal comes from the Swiss People's Party, which argues that rapid population growth is placing unsustainable pressure on housing, transport networks, public services, and the environment. Switzerland's population has grown from around 7.3 million in 2002 to more than 9 million today. Much of that growth has been driven by immigration, particularly from the European Union, under agreements allowing the free movement of people. Switzerland is not a member of the European Union, but it is deeply integrated with the European economy. Roughly a quarter of Switzerland's workforce comes from elsewhere in Europe. The Swiss economy needs immigration, yet many voters increasingly believe their communities cannot absorb endless population growth without consequences. Across Europe, governments face a similar challenge. Aging populations and labour shortages require immigration to sustain economies. What makes this referendum particularly interesting is its potential impact on Switzerland's relationship with the European Union. If the proposal passes, Switzerland needs to seek exemptions from existing agreements with Brussels, or even renegotiate its relationship with the EU. The most likely outcome is that the referendum narrowly fails. However, even if voters reject the proposal, the underlying issue will not disappear. The Swiss vote may offer an early glimpse into Europe's future. Tunisia's main opposition leader, Rached Ghannouchi, has been sentenced to life imprisonment over controversial terrorism-related charges. The ruling was delivered against the 84-year-old Muslim leader and dozens of other figures linked to the Ennahda movement, which combines Islamic principles and democracy. A Tunis court specializing in terrorism cases handed down sentences ranging from 10 years to life imprisonment against 35 defendants accused of involvement in what prosecutors describe as Ennahda's secret apparatus. Ghannouchi, the leader of Ennahda and one of the most prominent figures of Tunisia's post-revolution political era, received a life sentence plus an additional 30 years. The convictions were issued under Tunisia's anti-terrorism legislation. Charges included forming and joining a terrorist organization, assisting a terrorist group, and other offenses linked to national security. The case centers on allegations that Ennahda operated a clandestine network that infiltrated state institutions and played a role in political violence. Ennahda has consistently denied the accusations. The case traces its origins to the 2013 assassinations of secular politicians, killings that shook Tunisia during its fragile transition. Lawyers representing the victims' families have long alleged that a secret network linked to Ennahda was involved in the murders and sought to influence state institutions from within. With appeals expected, the case is likely to remain at the center of Tunisia's political divide. For many observers, the outcome will serve as a key test of whether the country's judiciary is acting independently or becoming a tool in an escalating struggle between the state and its opponents.